You know, with Bleach's final arc dropping later this year, you'd think the Bleach slander would let up at least a little bit. But alas, the internet will indeed internet. But if I'm honest with myself, the climate regarding Bleach has been the same for so long, I think I'm the foolish one for thinking things would change at the drop of a dime. It's come to the point where people are wondering what anyone ever even saw in this series. And that's where I come in. I enjoy a good roasting of a series every now and again like the next guy, but as one of the members of the Big Three of anime, aka the Holy Shonen Trinity, and the series that personally threw me down the rabbit hole of weebdom, I think a good retrospective is in order as we prepare to enjoy, or hate watch, the new arc later this fall. You can say what you will about Bleach's slow and painful decline over the years, but nobody could deny the absolute stranglehold Bleach had on shonen fans in the mid to late 2000s. Even today, the drip coming off of just one of Taito Kubo's characters could solve most of the world's water shortage problems. There are tons of anime fans who found their tastes for fashion and fashion design through the designs and stylish renditions he'd often give on the cover pages of his chapters or even in magazines. Although none of that even holds a candle to how Bleach contributed to changing how everyone would come to enjoy anime as a whole. Now, bear with me for a bit and let's close our eyes for a moment and imagine. It's Friday evening, and the year is 2005. You have no homework this weekend, and you've just placed your brand new iPod Shuffle to charge as you prepare to wind down for the night and tune into the weekend anime block on TV. You've waited all week for the next episode of your favorite anime, except disaster has struck. You were preparing for the conclusion of the Chunin exam arc, but, what is Zabuza doing on screen? Hard for a lot of people to remember, but this was once the only way most of us were able to watch anime. It was a constant back and forth of playing catch-up and then waiting for the next batch of episodes to be reviewed, re-edited, and dubbed for its overseas audiences. That is, until the emergence of YouTube. In the mid-2000s, YouTube's content began to truly diversify and anime content soon became extremely popular on the platform. As people in the West became increasingly frustrated and starved for newer episodes of their favorite shows, Japanese uploads to the platform became more and more commonplace. Though extremely limited in upload length and in video quality, YouTube finally became a place where global barriers for media were starting to fade away. Despite the obvious legal gray area this was, it also did admittedly great things for many of the popular shows at the time. As I mentioned before, anime was a limited resource, and Western episodes, being locked behind localization and editing held doors, were always behind the Japanese serializations. This meant that there was a ton of content that could potentially be made available and consumed at great length. So when episodes of Bleach dropped, it wasn't an episode at a time, it was arcs at a time. This was my, and many others, first encounter with binge-watching content, and it was mind-blowing. What do you mean I can watch 24 weeks worth of a show back to back? And now we come back to the topic at hand. What did this all mean for Bleach? Well, around the same time, Bleach was beginning to gain popularity in the West, but was still relatively new on the scene. It wasn't overly childish and goofy like the Beyblades and other shows targeted to younger audiences, and it wasn't so serious that it was complicated to follow for a younger mind like mine just looking for some action and a decent story. It had those things, but it was also new. It wasn't Yu Yu Hakusho, it wasn't Gundam Wing, it was a brand new show airing right now, inspired by those greats to do things that at the time felt foreign but also familiar. From its legendary library of original and licensed music, to its comedic relief, to its action, watching Bleach was an assault to the senses in the best way possible, even in 360p. Its presentation and execution were standout, and it was no wonder that the only two titles at the time that could compete with it were Naruto and the GOAT itself, One Piece. That being said, even though many of us came for the lights and sounds, we definitely stayed for the story. The heel turn this series went through from being a generic monster of the week show to a dramatic rollercoaster of emotions and plot twists was something many of us newer fans had never really seen before. It was like watching the evolution of a genre happen right before our eyes. Now, I'm not saying other shows weren't also doing this at the time, it just so happened that this was one of the shows within the shonen genre to really pop in the eyes of the masses, inspiring a generation of future fans, artists, cosplayers, authors, you name it. Not to mention, the added interconnectivity granted by the internet at this time through online forums, chat rooms, and even comment sections allowed people to experience all of these things together, in a community, the likes of which hadn't really been done before. Not only were we enjoying a brand new viewing experience, we could all do so collectively, sharing our ideas, theories, and resources for catching up on the manga for once you'd caught up on the anime episodes, and for other shows like it. It arrived onto the scene at just the right time to be the perfect gateway into the medium, which made its eventual fall from grace in the eyes of the anime and manga community sting all the more. There are lots of other channels that go over said decline in more detail about this. Feel free to check those out if you're interested. But that being said, its influence is still felt to this day, as some of those newer fans, artists, and authors I talked about earlier are themselves becoming the gateways for others into the world of anime. And to me, that's probably the best thing Bleach has done for anime. It didn't just help people get into anime, it inspired them to contribute and add to the medium as a whole.